Welcome to the Unconventional Podcast. Would you like to give the audience just a little introduction to yourself?
It's always weird giving an introduction to myself because it's like, what do you say? I've known myself for about 37 years now, so like, which part do I go into? But yeah, I'm Ibrahim Braimah. I'm a property investor, also coach and mentor people in how to, build their wealth through real estate. You probably need to ask me some questions to really get into because my life is very varied. Got a lot of experiences. Unless there's anything else that people specifically want to know about me. Yeah, I could go on for the duration of this podcast, just kind of saying who I am, what I've done, and the rest of it. But yeah, so Ibrahim Braimah, property investor, coach, mentor, dad, husband. Yeah, that's it for now.
Brilliant. Well, let's get into it. So you speak quite openly about your background and where you've come from.
Yep.
And so going back, how did you find leaving home, going to your friend's house because you're like, can you come pick me up, please? And then not really thinking about the process after that and then what happened?
I think when you're younger, you're just more brave, right? You're just more, now, when I think about, kind of building wealth, and I think about, luckily what I've been able to accomplish, and I think about my daughter and our future children, taking the same level of risk is probably something I'll think about a lot more. But when you're young and your mom's like, we're sending you back to Nigeria, you're like, I just know I ain't going back to Nigeria. What happens after that? It's almost irrelevant, right? But I'm not going back to Nigeria, so let's figure it out. So I wouldn't say I had a plan what's going to happen after that. I just knew that I didn't want to go back. And, my initial process was, okay, cool, well, I don't want to go back. So when it comes to Monday, when we're about to jump on a plane and I'm going, well, I'm not going. So are you guys going to let me stay or are you not? If they say we're not, I need to have a plan of, okay, cool, where am I going to sleep tonight? Where am I going to sleep for the next couple of nights? So that was pretty much the only level of thought that had gone into it from leaving home. Yeah, so I wouldn't really say it's a plan. I would just say it's youthful exuberance. That's the honest answer. I didn't have a plan.
No, and I think that's so true. And I think when you're put in those difficult positions, especially as a younger person, you don't have a plan. You're not thinking next steps. You're not thinking future plans. You're thinking, what can I do right now that's best for me?
100%. So, for example, when it comes to entrepreneurship, I know we're sort of moving forward a little bit and you can bring it back. You need to do that a lot with me, all right? But when you think about entrepreneurship, people always talk about, in this day and age, it's fashionable to say, just do it. Just quit your job and just make it happen. And I always say, like, who's going to pay the bills? Who's going to pay the bills? Like, if you want to go into entrepreneurship, which I encourage, almost everyone to look into, you have to have a plan, right? Plan it, because also going into something with zero and going into something that you've already planned for the past 6 months or 12 months, you've worked towards it, you've got the right amount of savings. Even if you've been able to save £1,000 or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But you've already created and curated a plan as to this is what's going to happen when I get to that stage. It puts you in a much better position than if you just jump and do something. But as I say, yeah, when you're young, it's not necessarily something you think about. You're thinking about the next step. And then after that, the rest just kind of happens. Yeah, but for me, it's pretty much a case of, well, okay, cool, who do I need to speak to? Once I've kind of left them, who do I need to speak to? Let's speak to, what was it called again? Let's speak to the council, housing support or housing benefit, or whatever it is. Like, can they find me somewhere? Can I find a house? That happened to be the YMCA. So I lived in the YMCA for a little bit after that. And, I was still at college at this stage. So I was still going to college. But now it's just like, bro, I was missing classes when I was at home. Now I'm living by myself. Like, college was just a social gathering, right? It just became a little bit reckless in that regards. But thankfully we're here now. At some point we decided to course correct. All right.
Well done. So around that time, what support system did you have, if any?
If I'm honest, I didn't have any. I came to the UK and my mom was already in the UK. She'd been here for, I think, about 10 years before me. So she left me when I was in Nigeria 3 years because she wanted to come here and build a better life, for us to then hopefully be able to bring us over. And she was able to accomplish that, So the only family that I had here was my immediate family. So all my other family were back home in Nigeria. I mean, some of them were in America, but obviously that's extended family. So all my immediate family was that. So once I was kicked out of home, there was no support. So I've pretty much had to grow up myself since the age of 16. I said grow up myself since the age of 16. The truth is I've always been grown anyway. I grew up in Nigeria. We're not wealthy. We've been through things from back home anyway. So it's not like I was, a young 16 anyway, or even a young 13 or even a young 10, right? I've always been like, life is lifing, right? You just got to deal with stuff. So it wasn't like this crazy thing that, this level of privilege and then all of a sudden you go down. It's like, cool, we just have to make it work. Like, it is what it is, right? There was no support systems, apart from, obviously, there is living in the UK and not having a support system, and then there's living in Nigeria and not having a support system. These are two very different things. And I just mentioned about housing support, YMCA, all of that, right? So there was that element, but obviously there was a period when that support got completely cut off due to something that happened in the YMCA. Again, I was young, I'm a boy, things happen, places get smashed up, police get called. Then it's a case of, now you're just in the streets, right? That support system you had there, it's now been abused and it's now no longer there. And now it's like real suffering. Now you've got to really be able to support yourself. That's when the real support actually left, and, you just got to survive.
And so being homeless, how did you then manage to get yourself out of that? Because it's incredibly difficult. Yeah,
it is. Simple things like having an address.
Yeah.
Like, people don't really understand what it means to be homeless, right? But simple things like that. It is difficult. In my case, I had to ask for help. Mm-hmm. I had to ask for help. I had to just eventually get to the stage when I said, okay, I've been doing this stuff now for the last, couple of years. Just, sometimes you might be just sleep on the sofa. Sometimes you're just sleeping rough on the streets. All right. So it's like my life cannot be this. I've always had the confidence in myself. I've always known that I could do more. I've always known that I was capable of doing whatever it was. I'm a very, very ambitious person, even from when I was young. And even when I was homeless, I would see the way people would look at me, almost like defeated, like, this guy is done, I feel sorry for him. And it's not necessarily coming from a negative space, but it's just like, I feel sorry for this, his life, where is it going, he's useless, all that sort of stuff. But I never internalized that. For me, it was almost like an anger, like, how dare you look at me like that? Like, I'm a king. Like,
did it change your perspective on people, on humanity?
No, not at all. It wasn't necessarily coming from a negative space. It's like, look at this tramp, or like whatever it was. It was just like a pitiful sort of look. It's just like, I feel sorry for this person. Yeah. And for me, I just never saw myself the way they were looking at me. I could see what you're thinking of me. I never saw myself in that way. So it was just almost like disrespectful, even though they probably had like some level of like leeway to look at, like, bro, you like, look at you, bro, like, you're stinking, like John said, you probably, I don't know how long you've been wearing those clothes for. So there's probably an element of like, I get where they're kind of coming from, right? Do you know what I mean? But for me, it was still just disrespectful because of the way that I see myself. So I eventually had to ask for help and just say, like, look, I'm sick of this. Like, this cannot be my life. And it really kind of happened when, one day I found it. So I was staying in this shed. It's pretty much like a dump site. It's like a garage where you got boxes, bags, where people just kind of dump their stuff, right? And I just had like my little corner, with my cardboard box and a duvet. When this is where I'm sleeping, right? And just on this particular night, it was raining. There's a little crack just between the door and the floor of the garage. It's windy, right? So the wind is blowing the rain in. I'm sitting there, my duvet's on me, it's damp, right? The rain is on the duvet, it smells damp, right? And some of you have been sleeping, you're not washing the duvet, all that sort of stuff. And I just started, like, the wave of embarrassment that just came over me. Like, this is the first time, probably the way those people were looking at me, probably I actually felt it. I was ashamed of myself because I thought, everything that you're capable of, right? Everything that you've done in your life, like, this is what it amounts to. Like, you're homeless. You're in this shed, like, what are you actually worth, all right? And I cried. I did cry. And I just said to myself, this is it. Like, I need to get help. And it was pretty much from that point on, I went out to my teacher, who'd always kind of had belief in me. Even when I was messing around in school, just like, what are you doing? We're like, you're smart. Do you know what I mean? And there's some good teachers, and there's a lot of bad teachers, but there's one teacher who's like, even though he would discipline me, he would kick me out of the class, all of that, but he would still take the time to pull me aside and be like, what are you doing, bro? Like, do you know what I'm saying? You could actually accomplish what you're a smart kid. Like, what are you doing? So I kind of hoped he would help, and he did. Yeah, that was pretty much where the journey began.
Brilliant. And so you also speak about going to uni in Southampton. So what were the steps that you took to be able to go to university?
You've done your research, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah. Steps I took, so went back to college, begged to go back to college because I'd been kicked out of college already twice, 2 years in a row. that must be a record. Like, you get kicked out, you beg them, you know, they're like, okay, cool, come back for the second year.
Third time's the charm.
Third time's a charm, right? Third time's a charm, and it worked, right? So beg them to go back in. That's kind of pretty much what happened. That's pretty much it. And then managed to get back to uni. My teacher, you know, he wrote an incredible reference for me. I don't know how he managed to black that, but I got accepted into Southampton Solent. Yeah, and that was that. That's pretty much the journey. There's no special sort of story behind the journey to uni, but that's pretty much it.
And so what did you decide to study?
Sports and business, football studies. Listen, I had to get into uni. Don't judge me. What are you laughing for?
I'm not judging.
Don't judge me, man.
I'm not judging. I never went to uni.
You're
I
looking
can't
at
judge.
me like those people that were looking at me in the streets again, and I feel really judged right now, Grace, right? I had to get in. I'm like, listen, I just need to get in. I don't want to hear no stories here. Let's go for the low bar. Football studies and business. Let's go. So, yeah.
It's just an interesting mix, but also you have a degree and I don't, so I can only applaud you.
Well, I said I went to uni.
Did you finish uni?
Now we're talking. I did not. I think uni for me was a symbolism from where I was coming from, like the homelessness, all of that. You know, back then as well, it's like, once you've been to uni, like, this is it. Like, uni was like, wow, I've been to uni, I've graduated, right? So for me, there was that symbolism of like success, like you've been to uni, okay, cool, now you're back on the right track. But the truth is, throughout that journey of, you know, going back to college, making it to uni, I'm obviously doing a lot of personal development. In all of the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich, like, you know, Tony Robbins, these are the people that I'm consuming. You know, especially Think and Grow Rich, it talks about getting sales skills, marketing skills, like, you know what I'm saying? Having your value to the actual world, like skill sets. Not so much about working for people, but skill sets. And by the time I got to uni, I went to uni in 2008, which is the height of the financial crisis, global financial crisis. I'm like, well, if you're doing business, you know, this is very generic, right? Like someone who's got a business does not need you, who's just graduated, to come and teach them how to do business. They're like, no, I've got a role for you. Shut up, do your job. But what role would they have for me? Because I'm studying business. I'm not doing marketing. I'm not someone in customer service. I'm not like, what role would they hire me for? So when I start thinking about this, well, unless I want to run my own business when I finish this, well, it's not likely that I'm going to be even, you know, have any worth to the market space. So that's when I started looking, let me go and get my worth to the market space. Let me go learn some skills. Let me go do some jobs. And that's when I quit. And
so you left. And how did you find your first job?
Yeah, I prefer that. I left. I didn't quit. I left. That's what I did. I simply, you know, first of all, wanted to get some sales skills. Again, reading books like Think and Grow Rich, like the ability to sell is something that any business owner needs to have, right? So the first one I actually did was go and get a commission-only sales job, right? And I was selling door-to-door and in shopping centers. You're going to be surprised when I tell you what the hell I was selling door-to-door and in shopping centers and in flipping like service stations on the motorways. We were selling makeup. Yeah, you weren't expecting that. Yeah.
So needed though.
Yeah,
every girl wears makeup.
Yeah. Listen, I wouldn't say it was a great product. I did love selling it. We had this little like shimmery brush thing. So it was like a brush and underneath it had like the powder in it. So you just flipped it over and, you know, the shimmer came out the powder. So you could just like...
So clever. Revolutionary.
This is it. I'll get the lady's hands. I'll be like, I just feel how soft that brush is. You see that? Yeah. Listen, now just feel it. Listen, I can sell some makeup. I'm telling you now. Right? So, well, you learn this ability, but you know, in sales, they say, you know, you eat what you kill.
Yep.
So it was commission only, right? And it was £30 for the pack. So you had the shimmer brush, you had a few little gadgets in there. £30 for the pack, and we would get £6, right? So you sell 10 of them that day, you're walking them with £60. Like, this is hardcore. So that's really kind of how I started my journey. But then everything really kind of changed when after that I've always wanted to be in property. Like property is, I've just always thought I could do it, you know, better than all these people doing homes on the hammer, which is just weird because it's not really coming from anywhere, but it's probably from how I grew up in Nigeria. Like property was something that signified wealth.
Yeah.
The sizes of houses that people just have, you're like, wow, like, do you know how much money? I remember the first time I saw someone, I was walking back. Bear in mind, I'm walking home, you know, we don't have money, you know, no shoes on, whatever. Like, and you see someone driving to the house, they press a button from the car, the gate opens, I see this mansion, I'm like, bro, do you know how much money you have to press a button from your car and the gate opens? Like, this is mental, right? So I've just always had that connection with wealth and property. So I wanted to get into it. But with no experience at all, I literally printed out CVs and just went around to every single estate agent on the high street of Southampton. And I was just handing them my CVs, handing them my CVs. And one after one, everyone's just saying no. Because I was very arrogant. I'm not going to lie. To me, it didn't come across as arrogance, right? To me,
you were just being yourself.
I was just being myself. I was so confident that I was going to get this job. Like, not even get the job, not confident I was going to get the job. I was. But I was super confident I was going to be phenomenal at the job.
Yeah.
I was super confident that it doesn't matter who's there. I'm going to be better than them. And that came across. I've come to learn that that's not a good thing, especially when the people you're shitting on are in the room. Right? Like, who's this knobhead? Like, am I allowed to use that language here?
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, who's this idiot?
You're shit. I'm amazing.
Just hire me. I'm just going, you don't need these people anymore. Once I'm in, like, they're done. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, it did not go down very well. But one thing I'll say to people is just, people talk about this confidence thing, right? And for me, yes, it happens, but no one likes being knocked back.
Yeah.
And I just remember, coming out of, that one when they've kind of, you can tell when people look at you a certain way. Yeah, they've said no, like, nicely.
Yeah.
But, like, they think I'm a dick. Like, they just, like, they probably laughed at me as I've walked out of there.
Bombastic side eye.
Yeah, all of that. So it affects you. So I'd walk out and, like, I don't know if you guys know what these high streets look like with this estate agent. They're literally, like, next door. But there'll be like a little gap in between. And I'll be like, stay in that gap where like this lot can't see me because they're thinking like, yeah, we got to it. I didn't want to give them that satisfaction that they got to me, right? But these ones I'm going to, they haven't quite seen me yet. And I'm like, just like taking a breath, just like composing myself, literally like back flat against the wall.
Deep breathing over the next one.
Take a couple seconds. Right, let's go. Same swag, same arrogance. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah, now we're going
Reset.
again. Yeah. But the second to the last one, he was just like, he's an Irish guy. And that's why I love the Irish one. Black people always say like the Irish are similar to us, right? There's this energy, like they get it, right? But they're similar. And he just sat me down like 20 minutes and he was like, listen, you sound arrogant. And there's no reason for you to be arrogant because you don't even know what you're talking about, right? He goes, I can tell you're going to be good. And I can tell where it's coming from, it's confidence, but it's coming across as arrogance, right? Just because you don't have experience, you might believe in yourself, but because I don't have experience, it comes across as arrogance. So I would say this like this instead of saying this. I'll say this like this. 20 minutes, just sat me down. And the next one I went into, which was literally my last opportunity, was the last shop, or coming from where I came from. But actually, if I came from this side, it would have been the first one. Also happened to be the largest franchise in the time in the UK. And I got a job in there.
Brilliant.
Right? I didn't just get a job in there, but I think what's specific about what he taught me was like the manager wasn't actually in.
Oh.
Where I was pissing the other staff off before, because I was speaking to the manager pretty much saying I'm going to come in and dominate.
Yeah.
But the fact that the manager wasn't in, it was the staff I spoke to, and then they told him. So he told me this during the interview.
Yeah.
After he told me I got the job, like they told him that you need to call this guy. Like you have to call this guy. Which is crazy because before I was pissing off stuff, but now, just after 20 minutes of mentorship, the staff are now going, nah, you need this guy on the team, which is just insane. And I got a job there.
Well, congratulations. That's
Thank you.
huge. And then you decided to move from Southampton to London.
Yeah.
What was the reason for that?
Okay. A couple of things. First, started my first business, failed, just to kind of fast forward. And then had the first time I ever realized that depression is actually real. I don't know if it's depression or anxiety, if it's one of the same thing, but that was the first time I realized this is real because I felt like I was letting everyone down, right? So obviously I kind of gone through the homelessness situation, then I made it to uni, everyone's like, oh my God, he's got his life back together, he's back on track now. And then I dropped out, oh no, he's done it again, right?
Then you got your job?
Then I got my job, I said, cool, like it's fine. Now he's got his business. Oh my God, this is incredible, like he's got his own business. And then, like, 4 months later, the business crashes and burns. At this time, I told my partner already, like, she's going to drama school, go drama school, don't worry about anything, focus on that. I got you, I'll support everything, right? Feeling like the big man. And then a few months later, all that comes crashing down. So I'm literally feeling like I've let everyone down, like I've let my family down, I've let my partner down. I was literally having panic attacks pretty much every night. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, I'm thinking I'm going to die. Like
That's
literally.
horrible.
Yeah, it's crazy. That went on for about a couple of weeks. And then again, like I said, I had all of the tools in terms of personal development through my life anyway. So I just, start listening to Tony Robbins again, start going out walks and jogging and then running and then kind of slowly start getting my mojo back. And then I just decided, you know what? I don't want to... I said to myself, I'm never doing my own business again, all right? It almost killed me. So now I just wanted to go and make as much money as possible,
Yeah.
right? And for me, I wanted to go in the financial space. I wanted to be in the city. I wanted to compete with, they say London is where it's at.
Yeah.
They said that's where the big boys are at. Let's go to London. Let's go and compete and let's go and see what we can actually truly do with everyone else. So that's when I decided to move to London and go and work in the city.
And how was it?
I'll be honest, it was good. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, it was good. It was good. Obviously, I didn't just go straight to the city from London. I was doing like normal, economy gig. And I'll say this to people. When you make a decision and truly make a decision, it means you're cutting away from any other options, right? Like the famous saying goes, when the soldiers land on shore and they burn the freaking boats, which means look at the boats. We are not leaving this island unless we win the war. If we don't win the war, then we're all dead. So it's up to you guys, right? Because the boats are gone. That's what making the decision is. There are no other options. So when I came to London, the decision was I'm going to be in the city, which means I wasn't applying for any other, let me go and work for an estate agent, let me go and do all these sort of mid-tier jobs. It was like, it's either the top jobs or I'm going to be doing warehouse work, I'm going to be doing security work. I was just doing those economic gig jobs until I eventually actually found, the city job. And when I did, it was working for the largest property investment firm in the city. And it was great. We were making, good money. But it was everything. It was my soul.
Are you running a business? Meet your new best friend, Sage Accounting Individual. Whether you're testing an idea, managing a side hustle, or running a full-time sole trader business, Sage makes digital record keeping a breeze. You can connect your bank, categorize transactions, and create professional invoices in seconds, and send them to customers in a click. You can even understand your profits, track who owes you money, and get your taxes sorted from your laptop or your phone. If you need a helping hand, you can get instant support from our Sage specialist via web chat, or connect with an expert accountant like me for expert business advice. With Sage, you can focus on what matters, growing your business. Join over 1.2 million UK businesses already using Sage. You can start for free today by visiting sage.com.
Like every single hour under the sun, like 80 plus hours every
gosh.
single week. Ridiculous. Like you come back home even after work and clients are still calling you. Even you're still trying to make calls because it's about, first of all, delivering, for the company, but also, we're making money. When we do deals, we're getting paid on top of it. And, when you're working internationally with international clients, there's all different time zones. And, one thing with working with wealthy people is when they want you, they want you. It's that simple. I'm sure you know that. So it was crazy. But then when it came to time to actually start building a family now, it really started to get on top. My partner's like, well, this is not really conducive. Like she's always known that I grew up without a dad, right? So for me, or my dad anyway, so she knew that it's important for me
to be present.
To be present, to be there for our family, all of this sort of stuff. So she's like, how's this really going to work? And I'm like, we're making a lot of money. All right, like, this is how we're going to make, like, how else are we going to make this money? You can't make this sort of money any other way. Which is crazy when I think about it now. I'm making more money than ever. And I'm not working anywhere near as much as I used to work before.
Yeah.
But it's crazy how the system has you believe like this is your best opportunity.
Oh, and it keeps you in there with all the nice benefits and the bonus and the salary and your precious annual leave that you're like, oh my God, yay, annual leave. And it just keeps you stuck there. And it makes you seem like anything else is a massive risk. We're always told that being self-employed or being an entrepreneur is like so risky. Especially like I had to rent somewhere in London and they were like, oh, but you're self-employed, you're going to need a guarantor. And I was like, seriously, really? And they were like, yeah, like we don't trust you, like it could all just end tomorrow. But at the same time, your boss could just fire you tomorrow and then you have no job.
And it happens a lot. Better yet, as entrepreneurship is risky, what I think is the bigger risk is you don't actually get fired by your boss. You get to keep your job for the 40 years. You've done your time, you've done your service, let's say 20 to 40, 26 to 40. You're now 66 years old, you've retired, you've spent your whole life, you've done your term. You've had your, 30 days, annual leave for your holidays or whatever it is. You're earning your 20, 30, 40, 50K, yeah? Okay, brilliant, that's great. Now you've reached retirement. You are 66 plus years old. This is the most vulnerable you're going to be physically, mentally, everything. Now, actually, I would argue is when you need to have the highest quality of life. Now it's time for enjoyment. I've worked hard my whole life. But actually, it's complete opposite. Because now you're going to start earning the least amount of money you have ever made in your life.
Yeah.
And your ability to increase that income is pretty much zero unless you start your own business because you're no longer employable.
Yeah.
Right? So hang on. I've worked hard my whole life. Now my most vulnerable stage and I'm making the least amount of money I've ever made in my life. And I don't have the opportunity to increase that. Now I'm screwed. I can't do anything about this anymore. That's the biggest risk. So when you say entrepreneurship is a risk, it's like, well, how are we describing risk? Like, what's the metrics that we're using for risk? Because for me, I'm giving it all now. Because at least when I get to that stage, I get to write my own checks. But if you just actually do what the system tells you and you get to the end, we know what that looks like.
Yeah.
That's risky.
100%. And so you failed in your first business, but I would never call it failure because I feel like you learn something from every mistake and failure that you have.
Yeah.
So it should never be looked on as a negative thing. I'm sure you learned so much from that whole experience.
Yeah.
Moving into the Airbnb space,
Yeah.
what made you pick Airbnb rather than renting out a property to tenants, for example?
I wouldn't say I picked it. I would say it was really the only viable option for me based on my analysis of the market space and where I was personally. Funny enough, I just spoke to a client today, a potential coaching client, and she was like, she's a project manager. She's got money. She's like, well, actually, I don't really want to manage properties, right? I've got money. I actually just want to buy the deals from a deal sourcer. But I want someone to teach me how to manage, right? But like manage my own deals, right? I want to actually just buy these deals. I'm like, okay, cool, great. Like, I've already got 2 buy-to-lets. I've bought my own home. Cool, that's your position. I was in that position when I started in this market space, right? I was in a situation where, my mom had COVID. She was in intensive care. Literally, the only thing keeping her alive is a ventilator. I tried to take time off work and they pretty much made me feel like crap for asking for time off. And I was like, I'm done. Like, I can't, like, this is crazy. My wife is pregnant at the time. And I'm thinking, what if this is my child? And she needs me. And you're telling me that I can't take time off. Well, I'm just going to leave, right? But then at that stage, it's going to be too late. Because now I'm giving up the very thing that's bringing in the income that I need to look after my child. So I said, okay, I'm not going to let it get to that. I said, I'm going to leave. So at that stage, I've got to be careful about my finances because now I don't have a job. I've got to think about, well, my credit was really bad from my homelessness days. So that was shot. And then it's like, well, okay, cool. I don't have the money to, pay rent, pay deposit, furnish a property, to go down these rent-to-rent routes. But I don't have the money to actually buy properties for buy-to-let. I don't have the money if I'm going to go into, commercial conversions, land developments. Now, look, there are ways to raise money, especially where the world I was coming from. I could probably raise money, but I also had this anxiety, which was, who's going to want to work with me? Because now when I'm picking up the phone, I'm not saying I'm calling from big box company, right? This is just Ibrahim calling now. This is who's Ibrahim? Tell him to get off my phone, right? Like, this is the energy I'm going into this with, right? So I'm thinking, well, I don't have the money. I can't raise money, right? Like, what other strategy is going to allow me to really get to the stage where I can start providing for my family really, really quickly? When I looked at deal packaging, I said, okay, cool. That's also an option because that's also a cash flowing option. You could say it's a cash flowing option, but for me, with deal packaging, once you package the deal and you sell the deal, then you're back to square one. Yeah. It's like, okay, I found a deal, now I've sold this deal, I made money this month, oh crap, I've got to go find another deal again. Whereas with service accommodation, you do the work once and it just continues to compound. So I've got one property, I'm making 500, 600,000 pounds from the property. Next month I get another one. Oh, that's now 2K every month.
Yeah.
Next month I get another one. Oh, that's now 3K every month. So it actually compounds and compounds and compounds. So for me, in the position that I was in, when I looked at all of the available property strategies for me, it was just the one that made sense.
Brilliant. And so how did you go around getting your first property?
Yeah, this was actually crazy. So I had made this I keep thinking to myself, did you make the right decision, bro? Did you make the right decision? Because this one actually came from, so I made the decision to, so there's service accommodation and then there's management, right? With rent, not service accommodation and management, there's rent to rent and then there's management. But no one is talking about management. You probably haven't really heard about management when it comes to service accommodation spoken about. Everyone talks about rent to rent. But for me, I looked at my situation, bad credit, don't have the money, right? So I'm like, well, how am I going to build this rent-to-rent business? It doesn't actually make that much sense. So I tapped back into my estate agency days and said, well, we didn't have to rent properties from landlords when we managed it for them. We just told them about the service we're going to deliver. We're going to get you a tenant. We're going to manage the whole process. You never, ever have to speak to them. And we're just going to send you the money every month. Okay, sounds good. Well, why can't I just do the same with these guys? So I said, okay, cool. Let me go and try it out. But funny enough, the first landlord I spoke to, and I had the money to do this deal. I could have done this rent to rent. But again, I'd made the decision, management is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Right? But he had this property empty for 2 years. 2 years. He was sick of tenants. He's like, they've put holes in my wall. They pulled the door off the hinges.
Oh
when
my
I went
God.
there, it was a mess. I actually did the content because when I was building my business, I was showing it on social media. I did the content around it, right? It's like the door was off the wall, there was holes in the wall, all of this stuff. So him and his wife was just like, nah, we're not doing this. So they just left the property empty for 2 years, right? Mortgage was all paid off and all that sort of stuff, right? So I could have taken this deal rent to rent easy because I was like, look, don't worry about any of that.
Yeah.
We're going to come in. I'm your tenant, right?
Yeah.
We're going to be the ones to handle, or you just got to worry about me. Don't worry about anything. I could have easily done that. But I said to him, I pretty much said the same thing. Don't worry about that. We're going to take care of everything for you. We're not dealing with traditional tenants. We're dealing with, people who are holiday makers, professionals, all of this sort of stuff. But you don't even have to worry about all of that. We will take care of it for you. So I offered him management instead of rent to rent because I've made the decision, this is the route that I'm going to go down.
Yeah.
And so that's effectively how we go up. So, I mean, I'll be honest, my first deal was a pretty easy one. Like, property's been empty for 2 years. I'm like, bro, do you want to make some money? Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, let's make some money. But the reason I said maybe I should have taken, not maybe I should have taken it rent to rent because I don't actually care. That was why I decided. It's why I decided.
Yeah.
I'm actually genuinely happy with it because he's a great guy. But that property is making a crap ton of money.
Well done.
No, but it's not all coming to me, right? No, but I'm joking. We're still making good money. But for example, that property is doing £6,000, right? Now, at the time, the rental value of that property was 1,250. So imagine if I'd taken on as a rent to rent.
Oh my God.
It was there. But, but we're still doing, over £1,000 a month from it, from management. So we're still more than happy. But I'm just like, damn. It could have been so much better. But yeah, so that was my first deal.
Brilliant. And so you talked about using social media.
Yeah.
How have you used it to document your story?
Just people are shy to get on social media, man. It's really, really strange. When I first started coaching, I said to my students, you can literally go back to when I started creating content and it perfectly aligns with when I started my business. I'm like, I'm not a public person. If you look through my social media, you might not even know I've got a family. That's my personal stuff.
Yeah.
I don't need to share that. For me, it's not about putting my stuff out there like that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm actually a very private person. But this is business.
Yeah.
So for my business to expand in 2024, come on. You've got to be on, so like, you need to be able to share your message with as many people. So we're talking right now. And this is something about social media where people need to understand metrics and they need to get realistic with metrics. And even me sometimes, you'd be like, I only got 300 views. Bro, if I had a room with 300 people in the room, I would be buzzing.
Yeah, literally.
300 people who you don't know from Adam. We just sat here talking. 300 random people have just watched this content. That's 300 people who now understand me a little bit, who've been able to actually hear my message and who might decide, okay, you know what? I really understand that. Maybe I'm going to start that business. Or maybe this is actually someone who I might want to work with. 300 people. Where else can you do that? You're going out here speaking to people on a one-to-one basis.
Yeah.
You've got to have 300 conversations to do that. So you've just got to be on social media. I understood that. And again, for me, I didn't have the chance to fail. I had a family. We were about to have a child, right? I'd left a well-paid job. There's no chance that, I'm private. No, bro. You got to get bread. Like, you need to make money like today. Yeah, so if this is what my mentor said I need to do, This is what I've got to do. So for me, it was that binary. It was literally
yeah.
that simple. Just do what you've got to do, to provide for your family.
I think that's so important. But growing and scaling a business is sometimes a bit of a bump in the road.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think that it is easy to do because some people are inherently lazy?
Yeah. Such a powerful question. Again, going back to when I'm having consultation calls, because for us, in terms of our coaching business, we're very, very hands-on with people. And I have this conversation. I speak to every single potential client of ours. I don't have another coach do that or another salesperson do that. I'm the one who's speaking to them because I want to make sure this person has the right traits of what we're looking for. Because yes, if you're not willing to do the work, I can say, we say we're going to guarantee you 3 new properties in 90 days, right? With our coaching program. Yeah, but if you're not going to do the work, that's not going to happen. So I'm not doing the guarantee where I have to refund you your money, but you're not doing the work. I'm just like, once I start seeing this person is talking, but the reality is they're probably not ready yet, and I just say, look, it's probably not right for me. But yes, what you said that is true. I don't want to say people are inherently lazy. I just think that if people knew exactly what they needed to do to achieve success, they wouldn't be coming to me. That's the same reason why I went to a mentor when I started. Even though I didn't have a lot of money, I spent a lot of money on a mentor to guide me because I know I didn't have time to make mistakes. There was no time for error.
Yeah.
I had to get it right. So I do understand people wanting help. I get that. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily that people are inherently lazy. I'll say people inherently don't know the steps and people inherently cannot hold themselves accountable.
Yeah.
Because if you look at, the most wealthy people on this planet, they all talk about their mentors. So I'm like, if that person thinks that it's important to have a mentor, I can't now say, it's because he's not intelligent, it's because he's lazy. It's because he or she inherently understands that, if someone has been there already, it makes sense for me to just get them to guide me to where I want to get to. And it's more about accountability. And I think, again, that's probably the most important thing. People find it difficult to hold themselves accountable. Easier to listen to someone else telling you, no, you need to do this, than you just telling yourself, I need to do this because I need to hit my goals.
Yeah.
It's weird, but that's just how humans are wired. So you might perceive that as humans being inherently lazy, but I don't know how to compute that.
Yeah.
But it's just easier for someone to hold you accountable. Again, that's why there's coaches and things like this.
Yeah.
Because people know what to do.
Yeah.
Like, no one needs to come to me for mentorship in terms of the information to grow the business. There's free content on YouTube. I do a lot of free content on YouTube. There's so many content creators that do a lot of free content on YouTube. The reason why people pay for mentorship is I want someone to hold my hands. I want someone to hold me accountable. And I want someone to be able to say, hey, this is what this person has said. What do I need to say to them in return? I think that's really where the value of the mentorship comes in. But where I would say you are right is people do not quite understand what it takes to succeed. And I think when that reality hits home, not everyone is committed to actually do what it takes to succeed.
I agree. I feel like, especially running a business, you have to sacrifice a lot and you will work more hours than you've ever worked in a corporate job.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you think you don't, you will. And I would never say it's the easier route because it's so, so difficult. The amount of work and the amount of different hats you have to wear.
Yeah.
Building a business is literally insanity. It's unhinged. But I think that the benefits are absolutely incredible. And to go back what you said earlier in the podcast about having a plan, I do believe having a plan is important. I personally didn't have one and I wish I did. But I do believe you can almost plan too much. And the hardest thing to do is to start. So yeah, have a little startup plan of startup costs and things like that, but don't keep putting it off because you will never have the complete plan because you can never think of every eventuality that will happen. You just have to go for it. And by doing, you learn and then you grow.
100%. What we call in my community, we call it income generating activities. When people, especially beginners, when they're starting off in business, we like to feel good as humans. It's like we get these dopamine hits. So when I create my logo, oh my God, I'm building a business. Or when I get my business card, oh my God, I'm a business owner. Oh, look at my business card. This is amazing. I've got a business on my website. And that's taken 6 weeks. We haven't spoken to one prospective client yet we're feeling good, right? So I always say to my students, you've got to focus on the income generating activities. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
This other stuff is a necessity. We need to have a business presence. So if someone checks us out or if we speak to that one client, how many times have people asked you for your website?
Not that many, actually.
no one gives a crap.
Yeah.
Right? But yet we spend most of our time focusing on that. But if someone does ask and you don't have it, it's a bit embarrassing. So yes, I understand you need the website, but not as much as you need the client, not as much as you need the bread. So you need to focus on the income generating activities. So anytime you think of, I want to prioritize a task, so okay, is this moving me closer to money or away from money? And if it's moving you away from money, you got to be honest with yourself, then do the other one first. The other one is always going to be harder.
Yeah.
It's always going to be the one that you're resistant from because you just don't want to do it now. Once I've done this, because this is really important, then I'll come to that. Oh, here's another important task I need to do before I come to that. And before you know it, this is 6 weeks down the line.
Yeah.
Lean into that thing that you think is harder, more important, because that's going to get you to your goal much, much quicker.
Yeah, I completely agree. And sometimes I think it's a whole learning journey building a business, but you do have to do things that you don't enjoy or that you wouldn't be really excited to do.
Yeah.
But then you become more comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah. At the end of the day, this is going to be a saying that you've heard. So this is nothing unique. Do what others want today so you can have what others can't tomorrow. And if it was easy, then everyone would be doing it. All right? That's just the reality. You know, business building is simple. When we think about what needs to be done, it's simple, but it's not easy. And there is a lot of disingenuous people out there who may, you start today and like, before you know, you're everyone will be doing it. Like, that's just the reality, right? You know, the one that really, really irks me, the one that really, really pisses me off, especially in the property space, is when people talk about passive income with serviced accommodation, you're a middleman, bro. Like, you are literally managing, you're dealing with clients, you're dealing with coordinating with housekeeping, you're dealing with maintenance. You're the one when anything is not right with the property. You're the one that they go into contact. Passive income. What? This is just being disingenuous because people want to earn passive income, right? People want to sit there, not do anything. Bloody hell, I would love to make some passive income.
Me
Jesus
too.
Christ. Now, you're going to get to a position. You know, my property side of my business, you know, we've really from this year focused on coaching side. My property side of my business is pretty much semi-passive, right? But that's taken years to get to, right? And it's costing me to make it passive, which means I'm literally having to pay someone to replace me. For you to do that, your business needs to be up to a stage where you can afford to pay someone. So that's not going to be on your first deal. It's not going to be on your second deal. It's not going to be... Come on. Talking about passive income is ridiculous. Yes, the goal is for us to build to get to passive income. If you don't manage people's expectations at the start, what then happens is they very quickly become despondent when the reality hits them. And I think that's the biggest problem. I think if people understand the reality, this is how I view this whole space anyway. If people understand the reality of what they're about to come into and they know this is what it's going to take, the ones who are not ready for it, they're going to stay on the side, and that's fine. It doesn't mean they're not going to come onto the pitch at some point, just not right now, because they know they're not ready for that. But the ones who decide to jump on the pitch, they're going into it with clear vision. So when they hit those roadblocks or when they hit those bumps, okay, cool, this is fine. This is what we're expecting. And then they're going to be the ones willing to push through. When you start telling people, you know, information that's not quite correct, you know, the expectations are here and, you know, the reality, they find out is here, that's when people just end up quitting and dropping off like flies.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the more people that talk about the reality of building a business online, the better, because it is so glamorized on social media. It like makes me feel really sick because I see all these people that are like, and I only work 1 hour a day and blah, blah, blah. And I just think that is not right. Yes, maybe if you're a few years into your business and you've got other people working for you, you don't have to be in that business all the time. You're able to work on the business. Then yes, maybe. But in your first year of business, you are doing all the groundwork. You're setting out those foundations to create a successful business in the long term.
Yeah. You're the marketing manager,
sales
manager,
social media
manager, customer service representative. You're the flipping cleaner if you need to be. You're everybody. You're literally wearing all of the hats. When people talk about like spinning all the plates, you know, when you're working for a different company, when you're working for your own business, you're really spinning literally like all the plates, right? It's a completely different beast. But going back to what you're saying, like the fruits of the labor are just so much more fruitful, man. Like seriously, like just... It's crazy. When I look at where I come from, the reason why I'm so passionate about this stuff is because, I speak to my wife all the time. Me and her, we've been together 12 years now, right? So we speak about, she's literally been with me from the gutter when I was just a degenerate, right? And we talk about these times and sometimes we're like, the other day she was just like, oh yeah, like, should we, for your birthday, let's just book this cabin and just go away, right? And do it. And yeah, cool, so we're going to do that. But to even think about that before is just not possible. Even when I was working corporate, financially we might have been able to do it, but time-wise, it's just no consideration. It's not possible. I've got to speak to my boss. I don't know what that week is looking like. This is madness.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas now, we can just say, okay, yeah, cool, that's fine, let's do it. I will jig what I need to jig to make it happen.
Yeah.
But it's cool, we're doing it, right? Little things like that. That's why we always encourage, irrespective of how difficult you think it might be and all of this sort of stuff, the rewards are just so much greater. And yes, I will say that being online has made things a lot easier. We don't need to over-exaggerate, how easy it's made things. We just need to say the truth. Yes, it's made things easier. You're able to connect to a lot more people. You're able to build your businesses quicker. There's different ways in which you can build your business. Now, like you, for example, you would not have had a chance 10, 15 years ago. What, an accountancy firm? What?
Yeah.
Where's your building? In South Kensington? What? What are you smoking? Right? That's just great. Now, you can do that. And you don't need anyone to find your clients. You know how to actually go out there and get clients yourself and source clients yourself. That's how the online world has democratized business, right? So there is, a huge advantage that we have over, times of the past. But again, it's not to say, oh yeah, just because it's made it easier, you can just come out here 2 months, build this, and it's like that. No. So we've got to balance it off, but we've also got to show people, listen, it's not easy, but actually, compared to what you're doing right now, we could be working the same hours. I could be working, let's say, okay, cool. If I match someone who's working a 40-hour week at the moment, at the end of the month, the money that goes into my bank after putting in that amount of time versus the money that goes into their bank, do you know what I mean? So you might say it's not easy, but the rewards at the end of it is worth it if you can make it successful, right? And that's the most important thing. So, it's not to deter, what we're talking about here is not to deter anyone, but it's to make people realize there's a realistic element. You need to go into this with a clear mind of what to expect. But if you do, and you get the results, oh boy, your life could be very, very different.
The last question is, what is a piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Just chill, bro. Just chill. I think someone's asked me that before. That's why I've come up with it so quickly. I was very, very hot-tempered. And, probably my life history has had something to do with that. Or maybe it's just in my blood. I don't know my dad that much. So maybe it's just something, a genetic element to it as well. There's a lot of hot temper, a lot of anger, and a lot of wanting to make it happen now. And as a result, I've made a lot of mistakes from that. There's something to say about delayed gratification, man, and just doing things the right way. Something might take longer, but just do it the right way. But actually, what tends to happen is if you just dot all the I's and cross all the T's and actually do it the right way, you actually tend to get the results quicker.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I've learned. So that's what I'll say to him. He's probably not going to listen, though. I'll be honest with you. The younger me ain't listening, right? I'll tell you, this is what you got to do, but you probably ain't listening. Do you know what I mean? So, but that is the advice I'll give anyone out there right now who's really, really hungry, just wants to go and get it. Keep that ambition, but in your application of the inputs, slow down.
Yeah.
Take your time, make sure you get it right, and actually that means you're going to get there quicker.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. We're going to do this reverse the next time because
yes,
I think your story is crazy. You're 21 years old.
22 now.
I'm old. Sorry. You listen, when you get to my age, you're going to start trying to reverse. You're going to start trying to lie about how much younger you are, right? But it's cool. I get it, right? But what you've been able to accomplish as well is incredible. So I'm excited to have the seats turned, right? But yeah, thank you for having me.
Anytime.